Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Zevachim daf Pei. We are going to begin on Ayin Testament based by the Mishnah on the bottom of the Amud. So the Mishnah says as follows: Dam Tamimim, bedam balimumin. So this entire parak has been talking about mixtures of two different things and what exactly you're supposed to do in those situations. So if let's say you have the blood of a carbon which is a tamim, which was fit to be brought on the mizbech, and it got mixed up with a balmum, and this is, of course, as Rashi says, this is most of the shchichahi. This is something which is common, because we mentioned in yesterday's daf that when it's something which is not common, then maybe we're not going to be geyser. So because of that, yishavach amma. And what is the reason? Because we're concerned that what would end up happening, even if, let's say, there's not so much blood of the balmum, but what happens if there is a lot, and it could end up being mavatal the dam of the tamimim, and therefore because of that we're geyser either way. Even if it's a small amount of dam of balimumin, we're going to say it has to be spilled to the amma. Kos bekosos. Now here, we're not talking about just the blood, but they are kos bekosos. They are actually in cups. So this Rashi explains: Nis'ariv kos shel kos balimumin bekosel shel ksherim enu nicker. So in this situation, you have this cup which is full of balmum blood, and this cup which is filled with tamim blood. So Belezer Omer im karev kos echad. If you could be makriv on the mizbeach one, yikravu kol kosos. Then you can be makriv all of the cups. So basically what he's saying is that's fine. Just be makriv it. Put it on the mizbeach. Kam omer mefil kirbu kulon chutz me'echad mehen yishavach alma. So no. What happens that even, let's say, again, if you are makriv one cup, again, just as long as you were makriv one cup, we can be lenient and say, well, that was probably the wrong one, and then all the other ones are probably good. So in other words, let's say you have 20 cups, one is balmum blood, and the rest is from tamimim. So Rabbi Lezer says if you already did one, we could assume that was the wrong one, and everything else now you could do. So I'm saying that's not true. Rather, even if, let's say, you did 19, the last one, yishavach amma. If you'll kerbu kul and chutz me'echamehen yishavach amma. We're not just going to be allowing you to be makriv everything, because maybe that very last cup is the one that was a problem. Okay, so that's their machlokas. Now, hanit lamata, blood which is supposed to be put on the bottom, for example, a carbon oila, shenis arbu benislam mamala, got mixed up with blood that's supposed to be put on the top of the, which means above the chut hasikra, which is for example, carbon chatas. So let's say you have the dam chatas and the dam oil mixed together. So Rabbi Lezer Omer yitin lamala. So what you could do is you can put the dam on the top, which would suffice for having brought a carbon for the chatas. We consider that which is above kil mayim. All the dam which is really oila dam, we'll consider it as though it's mayim. And then you can do a blood application below, which then it sounds like that by then when you do the blood application on the bottom, that blood will also now suffice for the carbon ola, and therefore you're completely covered. Fine. So Rashi says atachtoinu mamala reini oisin kilo hein mayim menei mitzvah lahaktim el yoinim atachtoinim. So the question is, why do we mention the top before the bottom? Because if you have two blood applications, let's say they're now mixed up, you should always do the top one before the bottom one. As we'll see in Perikol Tadir on Dapei Test, not too far from now, a chatas comes before an oila, and again, a chatas, the dam application is above the chatasikra. So that's like a little bit of a sidebar point, but still an important one, that you always do the blood application on the top before the bottom one. Okay, so that's that. and you put it on the top one first, and then afterwards on the bottom. Okay? And that's what he advises. No, you shuffle chama. No. This doesn't fly. Again, you have to take all the dam, and it goes, and it's spilled out basically into the amma, which this flood, this pipe, if you will, brings it outside of the base of mikdash, outside of the azara. And Rashi says because the leisel hu royin. Rashi says that we don't envision. Oh, let's imagine that this is the top blood. No, he doesn't hold like that. I mean, do not hold of royin. The imo nimuch. Let's say you didn't consult the kayin, v'nosin, and you put it on the top. So in that case, it's kosher, because at the end of the day, you did put, there's a lot of blood over here, and you put it on the top. So some of it certainly is dam chatas, and therefore you were fulfilled your obligation. That's if you did not consult the kayin. Pay. So let's say, for example, you have the dam of Bechor that got mixed up with the dam of Meiser Behema, whether it's mixed in together, which is bowl, or it's kosos. In other words, you have one cup of Meiser Sheni, and one not Meiser Sheni, Meiser Behema, and one of Bechor. So then, okay, since the blood applications are the exact same, you only have to do one blood application, then that's it. So it's not a problem. Now, this is even the bowl. So says Rashi, it must be because we hold yesh bila. That they're all mixed in, and therefore this blood application has both of them in it. Okay, let's say matan arba b'matan arba, which is carbon chatas. Actually, that's not what it means over here. Yanasnim b'matan arba, says Rashi, kimo dam oila b'dam shlomim, o b'dam asham. So basically, achatas is 4 blood applications on 4 chronos. This means 4 blood applications, shtayim shehen arba, 2 which is 4, which applies to a lot of other carbonos, including a shlomim, but also an asham and a chatas. Not a chatas, pardon me, an oila, a shlomim, or an oila, shlomim, asham. Again, let me just make sure I clarify this. A chatas is unique that there are 4 blood applications which are on the 4 chronos. When it comes to the oil, when it comes to shlomim, when it comes to an asham, there's 2 applications, but on the corners, was a machlokus, but let's say you throw on the corner, it hits both sides, and you do the same on the opposite side. So you're doing the same thing, so even though the bloods are mixed up, who cares? It's the same thing, you should be fine. Matan arba matan achas, this we've had elsewhere in Shas. What happens if you have a matan arba with a matan achas? So let's say, for example, you have the blood of a shlomim mixed in with the Bechor blood. So the dam Bechor is only 1 blood application. The shlomim is 4. So Rabbi Elazar, matan arba, just do 4. This is where you covered both for sure. Okay, fine. The Bechor only needs 1. That's okay, fine. You did 4. Rabbi Shua, only do 1. This way, the Bechor is 1, and we don't want you to add. So you're doing less than what you're supposed to do for, let's say, the shlomim. Okay, Rabbi Shua, when it comes to the Bechor, you're doing more than you're supposed to do. So the only time we hold it's an issue about taisif and doing more than blood applications is if it's just this blood. It's just the Bechor. So you know what? I'm feeling like I want to do more blood applications than 1. So that's the problem. But if it's mixed together with something which has 4 blood applications, it's not an issue about taisif. So you can say the same thing the other way around. Rabbi Yeshua said further, he also said like this, Bishanosata avarto al bal taisif v'asisa ma'isi b'yadecha. So in your situation, what happened? You violate bal taisif and you did an extra action. That seems better. That doesn't seem as good. Is kishlonosata avarto al bal tigra v'lo asisa ma'isi b'yadecha. better to be passive than to be active. So it's true. Even if, let's say, there's equal issues about Tigra, about Taisif, it's better to violate Baal Tigra than to do Baal Taisif, which is you're doing an action to sin as opposed to being passive and having done a sin. So that's the Svar. Okay, we're not going to get to all of that when we until tomorrow's daf, but that's the basic idea. So let's see the Gemara. Rabbi Lezer, Lo Hish Rabbi Lezer. So Rabbi Lezer, who was pretty lenient in our Mishnah, who says Ryan. So the only time he says this Ella Shnaim. It's not that you have, again, let's say these kosos, and you have 1 cup of Balmum blood, and then the rest is Bal Tamimim blood. So all you do is just 1, and that's it. No, you have to actually have done 2. So the reason why is because we had this before, not too long ago, that if you do 2, while you're doing 2, one of them potentially is the Isser, is the Balmum blood, but one of them definitely is not, right? So mitoich, since it works that one of them is not the wrong blood, so we'll say the rest is okay. That's the requirement. So Masa Rabbi Dimi v'Chacham Omer Mafil Kiru Kulan Chutz Me'echad Mehen Yishavach Alma. So Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Yirmi Bar Tachlifa. So again, it sounds like it's just 1. So Asavlach my Echad Zug Echad. We had the exact same thing before. Utsricha. Now what is that? Says Rashi, we need to have the marchlokus between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanan. First of all, by the case of Bali Mumin, which were Ivarim, which were in limbs, right? That's what we saw before, not on this Mishnah, but before, that you have limbs of a Balmum mixed together with limbs of a Tamimim. So what do you do in that case? And then now our Mishnah is Kosos Kosos. So why do they argue that you can defer and infer one from the other? The blood was done properly. That's by the Ivarim, right? All the Dam applications were done properly. Now, at the end of the day, what do we do with this meat? When the cups are mixed up and we haven't done the blood applications properly, you should spill it out. You spill it out. When the blood was already done properly, all you have is the limbs. That you don't spill it out. Sricha. Tanan Hasan. Okay, so we learned over there that sluchis, when it comes to the pitchers, a pitcher of chatas waters, mechatas, shenaflu soicha mayim kol shehu, that it fell in regular water. It fell into regular water, so we have this mixture. So interestingly enough, he says you could do 2 sprinklings. Says Rashi, Habola hazis mehen. So you can do 2 sprinklings, and then you're tahar. Chachamim say no, that doesn't work. You can't do that. Now Bishlam Rabbanan, I can understand the Rabbanan our Mishnah Sabra Yesh Bila. They hold that there's a concept of Yesh Bila, that there's this mixture. Actually, when it says this again, Bishlam Rabbanan Sabra Yesh Bila, V'hazah Sricha Shir. You have to have a certain amount. Then mitzdarf and lahazois, and they don't combine. Right, let's look at Rashi. So it says imlo nimlach, because our Mishnah said that if you didn't consult the kohen and you did this blood application, it does work. Alma samchinan bila. Must be that they hold yesh bila. Amrinan lach hamis are belach. When you have a liquid mixed with another liquid, misar bekulo, the whole thing gets completely mixed up because it's liquid. Every drop has mechatas as well as regular water in it. Or in our case, you have a mixture of the dam. So we say that the dam chatas and the dam oil is mixed. Every drop has both. Over here, I understand there's bila. Min hamayim hechshirim, but you need a shear. Ve'en kan shear shar yesh ba min apsilas. So since it had to have the specified amount measurement, the minimal measurement, that's the reason why maybe it's a problem over here by the mechatas. Our case where we say if you didn't consult the kohen and you didn't works is because he holds yesh bila. But over here when you hold yesh bila, you have to have an amount of a shear, and because it got all mixed in, so now you no longer have the shear, so therefore it's a problem. It wouldn't work. Rabbi Eliezer Mike Savar, according to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that it's not a problem in Ramesh because we say Ryan Ik Savar Ein Bila. If he says that things are not mixed together, so Kim Mazish De Hazois Maihavi. Why does Rabbi Eliezer over here say you can do two sprinklings? If you don't hold a bila, maybe the second sprinkling is also not mechatos. Dilma tervayim my kamazi, you're sprinkling with regular water. Ella must be kasaver yesh bila. So if you hold yesh bila, iksaver in hazos sricha shir. If he holds that you don't need to have a certain amount, lomlish de hazois. You should be able to do it once, and that's enough. Because if you hold yesh bila, you shouldn't have to do two sprinklings. One should be enough, especially if you hold ein hazos sricha shir. Ella ksaver hazos sricha shir must be that he holds that really, technically, one would be enough because you hold yesh bila, but he holds hazas sricha shir. So, 1 second. If he holds that it's sricha shir, so then how does it work? The Chachamim say it doesn't work because it wasn't a shir. V'iksaver emet starfin lahazos meimazash de hazos mahavi. If he holds that it's not mitzaref, then how does the second sprinkling help? V'inami mitzarfin lahazos. Maybe you do want to say that it combines. Miyemer de mali le shira. How do we know it was the proper shear? So there's a whole different slew of questions how do you understand this shita. So the truth is that he holds yesh bila and v'hazos richa shir. So let's understand this. It has to be yesh bila because in bila it would make sense why the second two sprinklings would help, because maybe you're only sprinkling with regular water. So he's forced to say yesh bila. But he also says that sricha shir. So the question is, how does this work? Only two carbonos were mixed up. So if you do it the second time, then you're covered. That's the reason why. Let's look at Rashi. Shir hazah mizu. If let's say one spray from here, v'shir hazah mizu v'nis arvu. So all you had was one spray of kosher and also this. Hilkach ki mazish de hazos. When you do two sprinklings, al karchach mali le shira. Shari lo hoyumin apsuin kan el kedei hazah achas v'hu hiza shtayim. So it's just a very simple situation that there's enough in here. There was enough for one sprinkling, right, of the mechatas, and then you had the other water which is equivalent to one more sprinkling. So there's only enough for two sprinklings. So he holds you need to have a shear for a sprinkling, but he holds the yesh bila, and therefore just as long as you do it twice, then you'll be okay. That's the idea. At least answer number one. Okay, so that's the shita of Reish Lakish. Fine. Rava Olam yesh bila, right? So really he holds again yesh bila, okay. However, hazah in sricha shear. Now the question is, if hazah doesn't need a shear, then what's the problem? Why do you have to do it a second time? But kanas the consider rabbanon kihechi delo mishtarish le. We give him a kanas, says Rashi. Hilkach imadi chada. If he only does it one sprinkling, shema inkan minak sherem klum. Maybe there was nothing kosher from that sprinkling. Although kimad tarti, if he sprinkles twice, this is the sheet of. Is this the right sheet? No, this is actually the sheet of Rav Ashi. Let's make sure. Let's get it right. Rava oim yesh bila v'hazoyin sricha shir v'shtei hazos tekamer lamilei shiura. It's not to fill up the shear. El kanasahu do mishtarish yistaker b'nefilazul harbos mema mayim suim. So basically, if we say only have to do, so if you did only had mechatas, it would work once and then it would be over. So if we would add the water and do 2, the guy would be like, this is a great idea. I'll now have enough for double the amount for 2 people, let's say. So therefore, because of that, we can ask the person to say that it's necessary to do it twice. Okay. So that's answer number 2. Rav Ashi Omer ein bila. No, there is no such thing as bila. So if there's no bila, then how do we understand this? L'chayra, how does the sprinkling help at all? Maybe it's always just water. So we say yaze shtei hazois, but nonetheless he sprinkles twice. What does that mean? But if he doesn't require, there's no requirement of a shear, and he doesn't kanas the one time. That if he does it one time, maybe all the regular water, and there's no mechatas at all. So the second time we'll definitely have mechatas. Okay, so that's another explanation. Okay, let's a whole bunch of questions here. Let's go to question 4. Sluchas shenaf l'seichamayim kol shehu, and again this is a sluchas with mechatas in it. So it fell. Kol shehu. So Rabbi Lezer Omer Yazer Shtei Hazois. So my time Rabbi Lezer the Yazer Shtei Hazois. Why? Im yesh bila. If there's yesh bila, one should be enough. If you hold in bila, then tartu shouldn't help. So Rish Lakish says yesh bila, but you need to have a certain amount of shear, and therefore to be mashlam the shear, you need to do 2 sprinklings. Or yesh bila, and the whole purpose of the second sprinkling is just a kanas. Or Rabbi Lezer says ein bila. And the Hacham and the Sa'ar of Kol Shehu, he got mixed up a small amount. So it's just a small mixture that was added to the mechatas. So you know for sure that some of it will go on. Okay, so again, the whole notion of yesh bila, that the bloods mixed, is do we say the bloods are mixed evenly, that like each tipa has both elements in it, or ein bila, which means that maybe all the dam is for example dam oila and not mixed, so maybe you can't put it on the top, or in this case it's a problem with the sprinkling. Okay, that was question 4. TA30. What does it say here? Slucha shnafel soichen mayim kol shehein. Rabbi Lezer Omer Yazer Shtei Hazois. Omad Yomer Yesh Bila v'Hazos Tzricha Shir Ma Yoyel Beis Hazois. So it says Irish is Sarver Achas Ba'achas Uv'Shtei Hazois Vade Yeshir Umitztarfos. Okay. All right. Question TB3. Sluchish naful osaychen mayim koshu champoisun mechatas madua. It doesn't ask how many answers. I wrote ein mevatlin. That's really not the answer. We say ulai ein bila, right? We start shir ze einoi o mishim knas. I kind of wasn't so sure what the answer is over here. I'm just gonna write not exactly. Okay, but that's TB3 asks literally the same question. TB3. Okay. All right. Weiter. Meisvei. So Rabbi Yomer L'diver Rabbi Lezer Hazah Kol Shehu Mataharas. Even the small sprinkling will matire. Hazah ain't Sri Chashir because it doesn't have a minimum amount. Hazah Mechsa Kasher Mechsa Posel. Let's say he sprinkled half. It's kosher, half is posel. Says Rashi, Lo tema hazak kol shehu hi d'ksher mihu lo yehi ima taruvas psul. Now afil yeshba taruvas psul machsher alma. Here's the part of the Rashi is important. That's all important. Time to Rabbi Eliezer, de boy tarti. The reason why he needs 2 sprinkles is lamishum tsirfu, with sarfo kashir. So this is actually a kasha on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish, who said yesh bil v'hazos richashir v'hakamayaskin just arba achas ba'achas. So over here he says hazak kolshu mataris hazak in richashir. Which is not, Reish Lakish says Hazah does need a shear. Here it says Hazah ein sricha shear, right? Hazah max a kosher, max a apostle. So that's against the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. Payment base. But and furthermore, Tanya, we learn Behedya explicitly. Hanitnim lamawa, blood that should go on the top of the mizbech, namely the carbon chatas. Shnisarvu benas lamata got mixed up, let's say, with dam oila blood, right, which is supposed to go on the bottom. So Belezer oimer yinat lamawa tataktanim oloi. So it says you should put the blood on the top, and the bottom it'll be apparently also good. So v'yamret in bila. If you want to tell me that there's these mixtures are not both chatas and oila, amai olo. How does it work? Dilma kiyoy vel yoinim lomat v'atanim lamala. Maybe if you hold ein bila, and according to the sheet, and this Rashi brings down, according to the sheet of Rav Ashi, he says ein bila. This is clear that he holds yesh bila, because if you hold ein bila, so why would you say that necessarily the dam that you put on the top is dam chatas and the dam that you put on the bottom is dam oila? Maybe it was the opposite. So Hakamayaskin going to Ika Rubel Yoinim. The truth is there was more Dam Chatas blood, right? There was a lot of Dam Chatas blood, and therefore more of it was Dam Chatas. Even you hold in Bila, because Yavul Malashir Tachtainim V'oid. So you put basically a whole bunch of blood on the top. So for sure you covered the issue of having brought the carbon chatas, and then you put on the bottom even more. Hatachtainim oloi katani, and it says that it also works for the apparently for the oila, right? And that's not what we're saying here. It says no l'shem shirayim. It doesn't mean lamata that therefore the dam is dam oila, but it means it's just a dam shirayim for the chatas. Even though maybe it's not ma'akiv anyway, okay, tashma. So that's what it's telling me to tell you, tashma. Nasalamata, so let's say you put the dam on the bottom of below the chutta sikra, v'lo nimuch, you didn't consult the kohen. So what's the din? Does it at least count for the carbon ola? So Belezer oimer yaksu yitin l'mal, you should put it above, but tachtainim olo, and the bottom will work. So hachinami barubel yoinim the koyevul malashir tachtainim oid. So it's just the other way around, that there's more dam ola blood in this case, and therefore you put, when you did the application, even if you hold ein bila, you still definitely applied dam ola blood. Tachtainim ola katani, right? It sounds like for the chatas, it works for the chatas. No, l'shem shirayim, same thing, just the other way around. Tashma. Let's say you put it above the chutta sikra, which again is for the purposes of a chatas. V'lo nimlach, again you didn't consult the kohen. Elu moedim sheyakser v'yitin lamata. Everyone agrees you should put it below. Elu olo, and this counts. So hachanami barub. So what does that mean? So hachanami barub el yoinim koyivel v'mal shir tachtoinim v'oid. Which is mashma for the oila and for the chatas. Mikatani elu v'elu moedim elu v'elu olo katani. It just means that they agree that it works. Elu v'elu agree that's olulo. But doesn't mean that both the chatas and ola work. It just means they both agree that it will work. Seifa tanu rabbanon the amri yesh bila, and the seifa could be like the sheet of the Rabbanon that holds yesh bila, fine. Tashma hanitnin b'matana achas. someone who does one blood application, right? So why not? Naviyam, so let's say you have, for example, we have Meiser Behema, as we said, and a mixture of Dam Meiser Behema and Dam Bechor. There's only one blood application. That's it. So V'yamr ein bila a might nenam matana achas dilmam mahai kayoiv and mahai lo kayoiv. Maybe you only sprinkled the dam of the bechor and not the ma'aser behema. Kagoyin shenisarvu achas ba'achas. So what does that mean? It says Rashi shir matana maza v'shir maza. There's a shear of a one blood application you sprinkled. V'gatani yitnu b'matana achas. Do one blood application b'shvil kol echad kaimer. Dahainu shtei matanois, two blood applications. The nimsu shtei b'mizbeach. So actually, it says that you should hainu shtei matanois. You should do two blood applications, and therefore both of them are on the mizbeach. That's it. This doesn't mean you just do one, because you have two karbanos and they both have enough for one blood application each. So you do two times, but one will be for the Bechor and one will be for Ma'aser Behema. That's all it means. So that's what it means. Achas, which of course ends up being two total. Okay. Matan arba b'matan arba. So arba b'arba. So let's say again we have 4 and 4 all mixed together. Matan arba. Fine. So that's the answer. Matan arba matana achas. So let's say you have the ola that got mixed up with the bechor, right? So as we continue to pay off on an aleph, this arbu arba ba'achas. So you actually have to do it 5 times, right? So therefore, 1 gift's worth mixed together with 4 gifts. So ihachi amrlo Yeshua, how are you oiber abal taisif? Hachabal taisif mehecha. Where's the about taisif? You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. 4 for the chatas and 1 for the bechor. El Omerava b'bolul pligi. They don't argue when it comes to bolul that it's mixed up already, that we say yesh bila and it's okay. Says Rashi, El Omerava kol hanach shinoi deshanin loy. Okay. Devadai hatachtoinim olulo dekatani bein l'shem shirayim bein l'tchilas oila kaimer. Even for the ola, it's talking about. Actually, it works for everything. Why? Because it must be because you hold bila. Umasnisin the matan dal matana achas the ika tuva mikol chad kaimer. There's a lot of blood in this situation. Feel haki lo tishma min Rabbi Lezer yesh bila. The ika shinui hamasnis l'ela yom tachtonim masnisim matan dal matan achas. Love the bolo pligi. Not talking about where it's mixed together. Elba teruvos kosos. We have different cups that are filled with different bloods in them. Become Rabbi Lezer be'el yonim v'tachtonim to yitain mishnehim l'mala. 2 of them above, l'mata v'shnei and below. V'shneim ksherin v'royin iniyas dam chatas l'mala kilu mayim. Okay. So ki pligi b'kosas. Rabbi Lezer isu l'royin. Rabbanan leis l'royin. So we see this difference between bolul, where and whether you say yesh bila or ein bila, or bekosos, whether we say royin. So bebolu pligi, you're telling me they don't argue by bolu. Al dam chatish b'dam oila sheyikrav, that we say royin, but royin v'nirva shelo yikrav. We said when it comes to these animals that were cohabited with, that we say you can never be makriv, even if they're mixed up. Al man nechaku, and here's the key line. Al dam tamimim. Tamima shenesar b'dam balasmom. Rabbi Lezer Omer yikrav bein bebolu bein bekaisais. He holds even when it comes to bolul. So we see that they argue also by bolul. So Rabbi Yehuda libra Rabbi Lezer masni bein bebol bein bekosos rabbanon bekosos pligi. In other words, you're right. It's possible, according to one sheet, what we just said, they do argue by both. However, according to this, we're going to say that the whole machlokus is dafka b'kaisais, but when it comes to bolul, they do not argue. Ad kan.